iconic names in rallying. Since it was called Group B, that's where manufacturers were allowed to go all hill. The impact ruptured the fuel tank, spilling fuel.
Hi guys, welcome back again to the channel. Today I'm joined with
family,
and we have an amazing video to check out together. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and let's get right into it.
The Audi Quattro, Lancia 037 and the Peugeot 205 T16, some of the most iconic names in rallying. Cars
why are they so close? Why are they standing in the middle of the road?
Like the car was coming with full speed and they are giving
he was just standing there.
Space.
And the other guy on blue, they were just standing.
I can't believe my eyes.
T16, some of the most iconic names in rallying. Cars that pushed the limits of what was possible in a way that we haven't seen since. It was called Group B and is still held as the golden era of rallying. Group B was a class where manufacturers were allowed to go all out with almost unlimited power, crazy aerodynamics and new exotic materials. It brought about new technologies like four-wheel drive, semi-automatic gearboxes and clever turbocharging systems. However, it was only for the bravest of drivers. The hugely powerful cars needed a lot of manhandling to thread them through the tight, twisty stages, away from huge drops and dodging a sea of spectators. But how did this come about, and what can we learn from the crazy...
Why do people stand
so close? I feel
Is it just me, or is something wrong with standing on the road?
Please let us know the fertility rate that has actually occurred from from this kind of.
What are you thinking? What are you thinking? Oh my God!
The car is fast, good, and but the people is just making us distracting our minds from the car.
And again, when the car moves, right, they seem to like build a barrier. Like,
yes.
What if another car is coming behind?
Crazy cars that won in the Group B era. Rallying went wild in the 80s. The FIA wanted to attract more manufacturers and so created a class that would give the designers pretty much free rein. No power limits, no regulations on boost and whatever exotic materials you liked. Rally cars over the years have been largely based on road cars, with rules tightening and loosening on how close the relationship has to be between the stock car and the ones that actually race the stage. For example, in the Group A class, the manufacturers have to produce 5,000 road-going versions of the car before it is allowed to compete. Wow. In Group B, to lower the costs and interest of manufacturers, they ruled that only 200 cars needed to be produced. Group B also allowed almost endless modifications to be made, meaning the rally cars were nothing like the road cars at all. This approach really worked, attracting many manufacturers to Group B, names like Lancia, Porsche, Peugeot, Audi, Toyota, Ford, as well as so many more. Lancia took the Drivers' Championship in the first year of Group B with the 037. It was the last rear-wheel drive car to win in the WRC. It was incredibly light, using fiberglass and Kevlar for the body, and was powered by a mid-mounted 250 horsepower engine.
What did he just do?
He literally jumped into the road.
Why did he come forward?
He literally jumped into the road.
It has much larger wings than many cars of the time, with a huge rear spoiler to stabilise the car at high speeds. It was supercharged to avoid turbo lag, and it was incredibly quick on the tarmac stages. Wow. However, it wasn't quite as quick on loose surfaces. So in stepped Audi with the Quattro, one of the most innovative rally cars of all time, a true game changer. It had an inline 5 engine with a very clever turbocharging system that produced over 450 brake horsepower. It had a small valve that kept...
What did you guys think? Did you drink Fearless?
You're coming to watch the...
Did you think... Oh, God. Do you know I feel like I want to enter inside this screen right now? Hold one person on the neck.
I'll tell him,
stay where you are. I get it. The game, the car racing, I love car racing, to be frank. But putting myself in harm's way, I don't even know what to call that. That's just too much.
There's no safety measure when it comes to people. They feel like car is their friend. They can just say pause and
Pause and to pause.
The turbo spooled even when off throttle, meaning there was very little turbo lag, making the car quick out of the tight turns. The Audi also had a very aggressive aero kit with a huge spoiler at the front of the car and an even bigger wing on the back. This was one of the first sophisticated uses of aerodynamics in rallying. Drivers said it made the car extremely stable at high speed.
like Jets Online.
The insane power was put through a clever semi-automatic gearbox and drove all four wheels. It was the first car to use a four-wheel drive system effectively. Before this, many manufacturers stuck to rear-wheel drive as they thought the additional weight would outweigh any time gains from the extra traction. And yes, the Audi was very heavy, and the four-wheel drive system meant the weight was higher up than you would like in a rally car normally. But despite the compromised dynamics, it worked. The Audi had more power than the rest of the field, but could also use it more effectively, deploying more power even on surfaces like gravel, dirt and ice.
Wow.
Audi won its first race with the car and didn't really stop after that. They shaved seconds, if not minutes, off stage times. The Audi four-wheel drive system really changed the game in rallying. But the Audi dominance didn't last long. Peugeot came out with a car that would expose the weaknesses of the Quattro. They used a similar four-wheel drive system but packaged it very differently. Their secret was that they really nailed the car's dynamics. They built the car to look like the road-going 205, a small hatchback. It had a very short wheelbase, which generally makes cars more nimble at low speeds with the trade-off of less stability at high speeds. However, rally stages are often so tight and twisty that this strategy paid off for Peugeot. They also did everything they could to keep the weight central. They fitted a 1.8 litre engine in the middle of the car, although it didn't have the clever anti-lag system that the Audi did. So the drivers used an old trick to keep the turbo spooled up. They left foot braked for the corners while staying on the throttle. This kept the turbo spooled up and gave them immediate power on the exit. But what was really unusual about the 205 was the orientation they mounted the engine in. Normally, race cars have longitudinal mounted engines with the crank parallel with the direction of the car. However, Peugeot fitted it in a transverse orientation, and instead of mounting the gearbox below the engine like in the Audi, Peugeot mounted it to the side. This meant that the majority of the weight in the car was between the two axles and could be mounted lower, making the car much more nimble and responsive in the corners. Low centre of gravity means the car doesn't roll too much, and if it's in the centre of the chassis, the car is easier to rotate in the corners. The 205's weight distribution wasn't 50-50 though, it placed around 60% of the weight on the rear wheels. In simple terms, rearward weight distribution promotes oversteer and frontward weight distribution creates more understeer. This rearward bias meant the car was easier to turn in and control through the turns. You can really see this if you watch the Audi through the corners. The Audi was very front heavy and produced a lot of understeer. The drivers are trying to neutralise this with the throttle, but they have to correct the car several times through the corner. The Quattro understeers, then oversteers, then understeers again through a turn. The drivers really have to wrestle it through the corner. The Quattro was by no means an easy car to drive. Now look at the Peugeot, there is one smooth input on the steering and the car looks much more balanced and easy to drive. There is no wonder it was quicker. It's incredible to watch as these drivers control the car when at crazy speeds on tight and twisty rally stages. Also not forgetting they are threading the car through a sea of spectators on the stage. But why are the fans allowed to be so close to the cars? The stages are public roads, meaning anyone could go and spectate. However, it meant that many got extremely close to the cars. Back then, people did get hit, but it was considered to be part of the challenge for the drivers. They often kept it pinned and had to hope that the fans would get out the way in time. This guy even had to jump over a passing car. Many manufacturers understood that Peugeot's approach was the way to go, all producing smaller, short wheelbase cars with all the weight in the middle. MG created the Metro with a distinctive boxy shape and a huge front wing, and the Renault 5 took a similar approach too. However, it was Lancia that did it the best. They finally scrapped rear-wheel drive after being uncompetitive all year, so they created the Lancia Delta S4, a short wheelbase four-wheel drive monster. Firstly, they developed an engine with a genius twin charging system. They fitted a supercharger to avoid the lag of a turbo, a bit like the Lancia 037. However, this created less power at high revs. As a supercharger is directly driven by the engine, it can provide boost at low revs, but saps more and more power as the revs climb. So what Lancia did was fit an additional turbocharger that would provide boost at high revs. So low-end boost was provided by the supercharger before cutting out and letting the turbo take over at higher revs. This meant the Delta S4 was amazingly powerful and had the grip to put it down onto the stage. It took many wins before eventually bringing the Group B era to a close. This era of rallying was amazing to watch. Incredibly fast cars and amazing drivers all pushing to the limits of what's possible. There were different winners every year and cars that looked remarkably different with incredible engineering. However, you can't ignore the fact that it was extremely dangerous. The cars were too powerful, difficult to drive, and not enough emphasis was put on the safety of drivers and spectators. The biggest issue was the minimum weight rule. Cars could weigh as little as 890 kilograms. So to be competitive, manufacturers would do anything they could to get this limit down. This created a breed of cars that were very fragile and not up to the job of protecting drivers in a crash. Many of the drivers explained that if this weight limit was higher, more strengthening could have been added to better protect the drivers in a crash. Several huge crashes happened. In Portugal, Santos crested a rise in his Ford RS200. He lost control and went off the course, horrifically injuring 31 spectators and killing 3. All the teams immediately pulled out of the rally and it left Group B hanging on by a thread. A few months later, the final blow came. Lancia's Henri Toivonen was the championship favourite when he lost control late in a fast turn. He was winning by a huge margin when he and his co-driver Sergio Cresto came flying off the road, heading down a steep hill. The impact ruptured the fuel tank, spilling fuel over the red-hot turbocharger, sending the car up in flames. After the incident, it was barely recognisable as a car and both Henry and Sergio were killed in the crash. This led to many manufacturers pulling out and the FIA ended the Group B class the following year. You should watch this video where I explain what it takes to modify a rally car to set the outright record at Pikes Peak, or this other video that I think you'll love. Thanks very much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.
That just ruined the whole thing for me.
When auto racing first began.
Oh.
And here I was worried about the spectators.
We were worried and 31 persons
Actually,
injured.
the worry about it is
died.
because those people acting like they have no survival instinct in them. Why will you be at the front? What are you trying to film?
You jump very close to the car, giving the driver no opportunity to even maneuver to avoid.
That was a huge loss, though.
The question is, if you get to heaven and they ask you what happened, you say it's Satan. You say it's the devil. Well, the devil was sitting on his own. You came knocking at his door.
But for the driver and the
two drivers
and his co-driver, that's really.
I don't think there is any game worth dying over. I don't think so.
It was an accident.
If they had not been on the way, the only people that I actually feel very sad for, extremely sad for, is those two drivers.
That went off the
But you see, those other people, I feel like they kind of like are part of the reason why that happened to them. As much as I'm sympathetic with the 3 that lost their life, but the other rest that was just injured, come on, you guys can do better.
So this is as far back as in the 80s, and it's actually very sad to still see. The last statement, the last part of this video just ruined the whole thing. To be honest, I don't even have words to say about the car anymore. It just ruined the whole thing and just gave us this huge disadvantage to why racing isn't.
But regardless, we love the racing cars.
Yeah, the
cars are very
at
fast.
least now the racing they are doing now is more better because the drivers actually complain about the lightweight of the car. I think that was why the other one went down the cliff. Sorry, it's better than what they used to do then.
And it's through all these car racings, according to one of the videos we watched, it's through all these car racings that innovations, technological advancement, especially for
Vehicles.
vehicles and jets and all those things, those are where it comes from. So I guess
Because there was a tight competition between every production,
Yeah,
so you
Yeah.
have to think
Audi,
outside the box.
Peugeot, and all of them. They tried.
Please let us know what you think about this down below. Do not forget to like, subscribe to the channel. See you on our next one.